Hi there, Dr. Christianson here with you from my favorite place, way out in the middle of nowhere. It's times like this that I get the most clear perspective on what's relevant and what really matters for healing. I want to talk about why I'm not a biohacker. If you look at the whole history of this long human endeavor to stave off illness and extend lifespan, we haven't made a lot of progress except for a few fits and starts. I think one of the biggest boosts was our understanding of germs causing illness and our ability to prevent or to treat those infections. And in a lot of ways, it was a blessing for health and for those who had their lives saved. But in terms of concepts and understandings, I think it's been almost a curse. It's given us an idea that things that go wrong have a small reason. And if you change one chemical facet of an illness, you can change the illness itself. This concept has led to, I think, the whole idea of drug-based therapies for chronic illness. We now try to isolate what is the one big cause behind a problem and what is the pill that can change the cause. Case in point could be cardiovascular disease and cholesterol. We think about the horror of heart disease and the lives that are claimed. We try to find what are things that associate with that. So it was found early on by the researchers of the Framingham study that those with heart disease as a group had higher cholesterol levels. And so we started to make this assumption that this correlation, that this relationship was somehow causative, meaning that the one caused the other. There's many great, well-referenced books arguing how this did not just pan out, that cholesterol is not the smoking gun we thought, cholesterol lowering does not make the differences that we expected. But the real deeper question is, what is the mindset? And in the world of those who are more progressive thinkers, more natural-based, more lifestyle-focused, can we make the same mistakes? Can we get caught up in the same dogma? And I think it is a concern. The mindset is that disease is an error. And that's really what it comes down to. The mindset is that when we have heart disease, it's because something worked wrong in our body. Or if we gain weight, because something happened incorrectly. We had too many calories in, too few calories out. And we tried to find what that error is. What is the glitch? What is the problem? But what if disease was not an error? What if disease was an adaptation of sorts? What if there were ways in which our environment, our circumstances, our nutrition, our genes, all these factors, as they coalesced, disease was our best attempt to manage, our best attempt to reach a state of homeostasis. So even in the modern world that does not favor drug therapies, we think about the body as being kind of dumb. In my profession, for example, we're taught that when you do detoxification, you've got to support the liver, got to support digestion, and I think they're noble ideas, but the fundamental concept behind that is that our bodies are really incapable and that they have problems because of their lacks, not because of their efforts. So in the case of weight, for example, we for so long argued that weight was really a math problem, calories in versus calories out. And many in the public health sector and those who set policies still hold on to that, even though researchers really have not. Given that obesity has grown in unprecedented rates, that's affecting animals where willpower is not relevant, then that cannot be the case. But we still cling to that, the idea that there's some error, some shortcoming. But what we're just now starting to gain the understanding of is that these problems are more adaptive. So weight, we're understanding now that it's an adaptation. It's the body going into a survival response. If I was out in a place like this with no great food supply for quite some time, it would be to my advantage to hold on to the weight that I could. And we've all got those mechanisms built inside of us still, and they're ready to act at a moment's notice. So we see this too a lot in terms of trying to engineer modified diets. I see that now extreme low carb, ketogenic diets are becoming a trend. And the idea is that if you can yield energy from fat, and if you want to burn fat, then the way to do it is to trick the body by forcing it to only burn fat. And I understand the concept, I understand the logic behind it, but the body is just so complex and so interconnected. It doesn't work that way. We can adapt to so many conditions, so many states, but the real thing we're seeking is being in a state of flow and balance and harmony and peace. And the whole mindset of thinking of the body as like a dumb machine or as a empty tool that needs to be hacked or tweaked or poisoned, fed toxic chemicals in order to shift its chemistry in some way. That's the mindset that's problematic. It's really us being apart from it and us being something distinct from our bodies, and that they need to be almost broken or re-engineered. And our function is greatest when we're at ease. We have this surviving mode, and so many things that disrupt our balance push us into that state in which we're storing fat, not burning energy well, not sleeping well, not very happy. And so many of the efforts that we put out in terms of trying to make ourselves do exercise more that we don't enjoy, go log an hour on the treadmill every day and you'll lose weight. Well, not really. Not if you don't want to. Not if you're fighting yourself. If it's not what you're enjoying or being happy about, you will not lose weight from that. You'll go into a deeper state of stress. You'll go into a further state of storage. So it's not about hacking or about engineering. It's really about healing. It's understanding what are the circumstances of health and then reproducing the circumstances, not what are the markers of health. There are many of them. There are things we can measure, such as our blood sugar, our stress resilience, our levels of brain chemicals. And all too often we fall short and think about changing those markers rather than changing the whole conditions that gave rise to them. Cortisol is a great case in point. When I first started practicing, there was a pretty old book by Dr. William Jeffries called Safe Uses of Cortisol. And at this time, this was the mid-90s, the concept of anything wrong with the adrenals that was not just adrenal disease was kind of new. It was a pretty radical concept. So many taught that people have these conditions in which cortisol is too low, and the problem is just low cortisol. So you give cortisol and that would theoretically help. And it seems simple enough, and I regret to say that I did follow along with these ideas for a short period of time, but I saw very quickly that people did not achieve greater health. They'd become more anxious, they would have more weight gain, higher blood sugar, they weren't healthier from it. And I realized low cortisol was certainly a marker of them being at an unhealthy state, but it wasn't the cause of them being at an unhealthy state. If it was that simple, then adding cortisol should raise vitality, but I really didn't see people getting more vital. I saw them becoming more out of balance, if anything. So I came to realize that there's all these markers of vitality that can be relevant roadmaps, but they're not the actual levers. They're not what creates vitality. They are what manifest in a state of vitality, if that makes sense. So the trick is not to abandon these measurements or these metrics or these tools. I think they're great. I think that we can find great utility in evaluating how we live and what we do and what habits are probably more effective than others. But the pitfall lies in thinking of these measurements as the levers onto themselves, that if we just change them by brute force or by any method, our health will improve. And that's what a lot of hacking is about. You can look at the brain waves that are found in someone who's done 30 years of meditation and say, well, how can I zap my brain to create those same brain waves instantly? Like, well, you probably could. There probably are some ways you can do that. It wouldn't be fair to assume you would achieve the same benefits you would achieve having become a person that could set aside quiet time for long lengths of your life just by changing those markers. But that's the mindset. So I think our new trend moving forward is more shifting the mindset than anything. It's not about what can we hack, what can we measure, what can we shift, but really how can we live? How can we, in the context of our modern lives, which aren't going to change too radically. We've got certain limitations. We're living in cities by and large. So in the confines, in the context of modern life, how can we thrive again? And how can we create a life in which these positive signs of health naturally show up and flourish? So that's what healing is all about. So that's why I think less about hacking and more about healing. Dr. Christianson here. Thanks for spending some time with me, and we'll talk again real soon.